Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would talk about this little video that I found very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a video by Mr. DontesBoxingNation, a channel that I tend to review here and there, mainly in my opinion for his outrageous statements, at least for a certain amount of the times. But Dante today is going to be talking about his favorite fighter that he likes to talk about, whether he says that he hates him or not, Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez. And in this conversation, we're going to be talking about, in my opinion, where does Mr. Canelo Alvarez's career go from here? Now, Dante is going to state within the video that he believes, at least allegedly believes, that he thinks that Canelo Alvarez's career is pretty much over. Because allegedly, according to him, he does not believe that Canelo is going to defeat Bivol in a rematch. He also does not believe that he's going to defeat Charlo, Andrade, or David Benavidez. Do I agree with that? No, I do not. It just is what it is. Now, overall, when we talk about the hardest match out of any of those matches, of course, it would be Dimitri Bivol, because Dimitri Bivol not only is the biggest out of all those opponents compared to Canelo Alvarez, he's also the most skilled. And I don't think that there really is any debate about that. What I will say is this: I was watching recent highlights a little bit yesterday, I believe, after the Bivol and Ramirez rematch, or excuse me, after the Ramirez and Bivol fight. And I was watching the first Canelo and Bivol fight, and Canelo actually was a little bit more competitive than what I remember. I still think that it certainly still did deserve to be scored to Dimitri Bivol, at least 8 rounds to 4. But it was very clear, in my opinion, that Canelo Alvarez, the reason why he was so subpar in that fight is because his stamina was completely shot. And once again, who knows? That could have been because he just gained a little bit too much weight. It could have also maybe been because who knows, he wasn't on that special meat or on PEDs. Who the hell knows? He has been caught on PEDs in the past. It could have been for a multitude of things. But if Canelo is going to defeat Dimitri Bivol within a rematch, he is going to have to be lighter in terms of weight. And on top of that, he's going to have to fight him a lot like what he did within the first fight. And he's going to have to prepare it even for more of a hell of a type of matchup than what he did in the first fight. Because Dimitri Bivol, he more than likely overall was trying to feel out Canelo Alvarez in that first fight and saying, okay, how good is he truly? Well, now after Dimitri Bivol had a taste of Canelo Alvarez in the first fight and he was able to pretty much thoroughly dominate him, Canelo is really going to have to pull a rabbit out of his ass, in my opinion, in order to defeat Dimitri Bivol in a rematch. Not saying that it's impossible. I would give Canelo Alvarez at his best a 35 to 40% chance at most against Bivol to win the rematch. But right now, just taking a look at Dimitri Bivol's style and his skill set, I don't really know, in my opinion, if I would bet on Canelo to defeat Dimitri Bivol. But once again, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked because this is also going to be me, once again, talking about Canelo Alvarez and, in my view, how great or not great that he is. And if you know my opinion about Canelo, Canelo is a great fighter. And not only is he a great fighter, he is an all-time great fighter. And there's certain people that try to deny that fact. Listen, I don't think that it's really anything to deny. Once again, I don't think it's anything to get upset about. It's nothing to get up in arms about. Canelo very clearly is an all-time great fighter. And certain people ask me whether they're for Canelo or against him. And keep in mind that I don't have an allegiance towards any of these fighters. Any of the athletes that I talk about, I do not have an allegiance to. Now, I may have certain athletes that I like to talk a little bit more about than others when it comes down to it because usually they have the most narratives about them or they may be overall, a little bit more popular. But at the end of the day, I don't have an allegiance towards any of these fighters. So anything that I state about any one of these fighters is going to be my personal, logical, and objective opinion. So it is what it is. And if you personally believe that I'm leaving out any information or facts, then you can certainly comment it down below and I'll respond. But anyways, when it comes to Canelo, I certainly believe that he's a great fighter, and I don't think that there's any debate about that. You always hear these channels like Dante and some of these guys claim, oh, well, if Canelo wants to be a great fighter, Canelo is not already a great fighter. He's an all-time great fighter. And certain people may say, well, how can you say he's an all-time great fighter? I've already told people this. Canelo is already within my top 30 pound for pound of all time. He's around that range, meaning what? That he's around the Tommy Hearns, Joe Calzaghe, Bernard Hopkins, Andre Ward range. That's where he is, in my opinion. And some people may say, oh, no way, he's around there. Well, what really is your specifications? What really overall is your logical reasoning to not have Canelo Alvarez there? Because if we're really going to debate Canelo Alvarez over Tommy Hearns, you could easily do that. And in my opinion, I would put Canelo over Tommy Hearns, who in my opinion has been a little bit overrated throughout his career. But it is what it is in terms of Tommy Hearns. Basically what I'll state is this. If you believe that certain fighters like a Sugar Shane Mosley or like a Miguel Cotto or an Oscar De La Hoya or an Eric Morales or a Marco Antonio Barrera or a Juan Manuel Marquez, if you believe that all those fighters are first ballot Hall of Famers, if you believe that all those fighters are somewhat of all-time great fighters or greats, let me tell you something. Canelo is above every one of the fighters that I just mentioned. He is above Miguel Cotto. He is above Oscar De La Hoya. He is above overall Marco Antonio Barrera and Eric Morales. He is above Juan Manuel Marquez. He is above every single one of those fighters, period, point blank. Because what Canelo could do overall that those guys could not do is not only show a skill set to another dimension to where maybe they cannot perform, but on top of that, when they were able to move up the weight classes, they were not as successful as what a Canelo Alvarez was able to be. Juan Manuel Marquez, even for how great he was, he lost the majority of the fights to Manny Pacquiao. And if it weren't for Manny Pacquiao being really stupid and irresponsible in that last and final fourth fight, Pacquiao probably would have knocked him out. It just is what it is. And on top of that, Marquez also lost to Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Timothy Bradley. So Marquez really never had the debate, in terms of being the best fighter of his era. Canelo Alvarez at one point in time had the argument of that. Now, just because at one point in time a fighter all in all was ranked number one pound for pound and one other fighter wasn't, doesn't always mean that they're greater than that fighter. But at the end of the day, Canelo's consistency and his skill set and the victories and the way that he's able to do it even at higher weight classes where he is clearly outsized shows you the greatness of a Canelo Alvarez. He's able to beat A-grade fighters, overall. Yes, he lost against Dimitri Bivol, but when you talk about the Danny Jacobs, the Caleb Plants, when you talk about the Gennady Triple G Golovkins, who probably was more similar in size, or the Callum Smiths, or even some of the other A-grade wins, more similar in size to him with a Billy Joe Saunders or an Austin Trout or an Adeslani Lara. Sergey Kovalev when he was a little bit bigger and sure a little bit more wore down, but still a champion. It's very obvious that Canelo was an all-time great fighter, and if you can't see that or if you're trying to deny that fact, it's no offense, but I really can't take you seriously. It just is what it is, because what that tells me is that you have a personal vendetta with him, and I'm not about that. I don't operate on that bitch-ass level. It is what it is. I don't have a vendetta with any of these fighters. I don't stick up for any of these fighters if I believe that they're in the wrong. Everything that I'm going to state has a logical and objective reasoning. So it is what it is. But anyways, Mr. DontesBoxingNation is going to talk about where Canelo's career goes from here. And I also think that that's very particularly interesting. Because in my opinion, Canelo, if he does play his cards right, or if he is able to get certain victories within his career, he does have the possible opportunity of becoming eventually a top 10 fighter of all time, at least within that debate. And a lot of these guys know that. That's why a lot of them do not like Canelo. They realize that Canelo will eventually, debatably, have a debate there if he is able to get some of the wins that he's able to get, and they don't want him there. That's why every single fighter that Canelo ends up fighting one point in time, they were very decent, and apparently Canelo was avoiding them. Then after Canelo Alvarez beats them, they were this weak European fighter, or they already had a loss on their record, or blah, 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 but they don't keep the same standards everywhere else. You know why that is? Because they see Canelo as the main threat. And when I say that, I get certain people overall that come in here that get over emotional and they don't really take the weight of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is not necessarily that Canelo is going to replace some of the all-time great black fighters, but what I am saying is that channels like Dante and certain channels like these, they don't want someone like a Canelo Alvarez being remembered on their level. So certain people get emotional and upset when I say that. It's nothing to get up in arms about. It's just the truth. If Canelo was able to get the victories like over Charlo and Benavidez and Bivol, he'll be right there almost with any fighter in history. That's just the way that it is. But anyways, it is going to be very interesting to see once again where Canelo goes from here. Because if he does lose to Dimitri Bivol in a rematch, there is no guarantee that Canelo is going to be the same fighter after that. And he is also going to have to be judged on, even after the loss to Dimitri Bivol, if he's able to beat David Benavidez and Jamal Charlo especially. And maybe Demetrius Bubble Andrade if that fight ends up happening. He is going to have to be judged on those fights. So this could mean for Canelo, in my opinion, that this could mean the difference between him being a top 30 fighter of all time or a top 40 fighter of all time versus someone that could eventually make it into the top 20 or top 10, who knows, maybe even top 5. So Canelo, once again, it's going to be very interesting to see where he goes from here. But Let's see what Dante has to say. Let's get into it.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? Okay, since Canelo hasn't said anything about Bivol's terrific win over Gilberto Ramirez, Eddie Hearn, he speaks on Canelo Alvarez's behalf. And honestly, it really sounds like he's trying to give Canelo Alvarez a pep talk. He's indirectly trying to give Canelo Alvarez the courage and the confidence that Canelo is supposed to have himself. You hear the reporter talking to Eddie Hearn, and the reporter is basically speaking in codes. He's telling Eddie, he's saying, please don't put Canelo in there with Bivol again, because Bivol is going to beat him again easy, maybe even easier in the rematch. And then Eddie, he responds by saying, well, I think Canelo Alvarez, he doesn't care about...
Well, I don't really know if that's what the reporter was saying. All the reporter said, at least from the audio that I heard, was that there's a certain amount of people that may believe that Dimitri Bivol may actually be able to be even more dominant in the rematch. I don't know if he was for Canelo Alvarez or not, but there is a possibility of that if Canelo does not play his cards right. That's why it may even behoove him, or that's why it may even be best for him to take a Jamal Charlo or David Benavidez fight before he goes into another rematch or goes into another match with Dimitri Bivol. Because once again, Bivol is not to be taken lightly. Bivol is, I mean, it's no offense against Jamal Charlo or David Benavidez, but he's just probably a couple levels ahead of those guys. I've just never really been overtly impressed with them. I mean, that's not me saying that they don't have a chance against Canelo Alvarez, but really, in my opinion, the only thorough chance that they have against Canelo is because maybe their size, because they're probably a little bit bigger than Canelo in terms of height and reach. And on top of that, when it comes down to it, if Canelo maybe does not show up as the same fighter, or maybe he doesn't show up in the best of conditioning, or maybe he's not mentally the same after the Bivol loss, that's really the only way that I really see those fighters beating Canelo.
Ability, meaning he doesn't care about losing. He's willing to do whatever it takes to avenge a loss, which we know that's not the case. Because if it was Canelo Alvarez, he would have took an immediate rematch after he lost to Bivol the first time. He would have also
Well, listen, at the end of the day, every fighter, especially when you're on the level of a Canelo Alvarez, you have to always care about your marketability, because certain people that don't care about their marketability, they end up overall not being that valuable, or they end up overall, possibly being bankrupt later on down the line with very little opportunities. But listen, at the end of the day, Canelo Alvarez, once again, a lot of these people, they got on Canelo's ass because he didn't take the immediate rematch over Bivol. I thought that it was very necessary for Canelo not to take the rematch over Dimitri Bivol. The reason why Dante wanted to see the immediate rematch and all these other guys wanted to see the immediate rematch is because they wanted Canelo to get his ass kicked. That's the reason why. Because they knew that more than likely that if Canelo went into an immediate rematch, that there was no way that he was going to be able to recover on time, and that there was no way overall that he'd be able to figure out or gain the confidence of what he needed to. So that's why, in my opinion, it was a very great decision what Canelo Alvarez did, because he don't want to end up like Deontay Wilder did, going out overall on his shield, getting his ass whooped, completely to the point of almost lifelessness in that third fight against Tyson Fury. You don't want to end up like that. And Canelo still has a great amount of years ahead of him. So if Canelo is intelligent when it comes down to it overall, he may take the Dimitri Bivol, fight now, but in my opinion, it may even be better for him to take a Charlo or a Benavidez first.
An immediate rematch with Edislan.
And I'm also hearing rumors overall that he may fight, the winner of the John Ryder versus, whoever the hell wins that fight. I can't remember the other guy's name, because apparently Canelo wants to fight in Britain, and he might be able to get away with that. But after that, he is going to have to face a legitimate A-grade fighter that is either A, undefeated, or is looked to have a legitimate chance.
Lara, just like Floyd Mayweather took immediate rematches with Jose Luis Castillo and Maidana. So Canelo Alvarez has never been the person that Eddie Hearn is describing. But Eddie knows this. Once again, Eddie Hearn is trying to pump the confidence into Canelo Alvarez. Eddie is telling Canelo basically, Canelo, if you believe that you're truly great, you're supposed to take on the toughest challenges. Eddie Hearn's pep talk is analogous to when Oscar De La Hoya...
Once again, I don't understand this narrative overall. I mean, I know why Dante really tries to push it, but anyone who really knows shit about boxing, unless you really have a big racial issue or you just don't like Canelo, I really never understood this narrative. Because if you know shit about boxing, Canelo fought Saunders and Jacobs and Trout and Lara and Golovkin and Kovalev and Cotto and Callum Smith and overall Dimitri Bivol. He fought all these guys when they were A-grade fighters. He fought all these guys when they were A-grade fighters, and he won 90% of the fights that I just mentioned. So it is what it is.
Was promoting Canelo Alvarez, and he had told reporters that in order for Canelo Alvarez to be one of the greats, he's going to have to fight the likes of Demetrius Andrade and Jamal Charlo. This is, of course,
the fighters that Canelo Alvarez is really going to have to be able to beat, especially if he wants to be remembered for sure as a top 20 fighter of all time. He's going to have to at least beat Jamal Charlo and David Benavidez. I don't think a lot of people really give a shit to see the Demetrius Bubble Andrade fight. It's a fight that I would personally like to see. But I mean, in my opinion, Andrade, I really don't know how good he is in all actuality. I think that he's a decent fighter, but I always thought that he was a little bit overrated. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have a chance against Canelo Alvarez. It still would be a very decent name for Canelo. But the main two fights, especially because of their popularity that everyone's going to remember from the lower weight classes, is going to be David Benavidez and Jamal Charlo.
When Canelo Alvarez was fighting at 160. And now once again you hear Eddie Hearn saying that Canelo Alvarez, he wants to take on the tough challenges because he wants to be great. In other words, he's really saying in a nice way to Canelo Alvarez, we're not going to allow you.
Once again, Canelo Alvarez already is a great fighter. He's already an all-time great fighter, in my opinion. The question is, how great is he?
You to just cherry pick and fight on the zone and get paid $20, $30 million. Those days are over, Canelo. If you want a big payday, the only fight we have for you available is the Bivol rematch. We've completely run out of cherries for you to fight, Canelo Alvarez. And this is the reason why Eddie is pushing so hard for this Canelo Bivol rematch. Eddie Hearn has come to the conclusion that the jig is up. Canelo Alvarez's career is coming to an end very soon. And the only thing DAZN can do is profit off of Canelo taking another L and start promoting Bivol as the next cash.
Well, that really is what you're hoping for. And I've been saying this. They've been preying on Canelo Alvarez's downfall for a very, very long time. Now, who knows? Could that be the truth? Could it be that, maybe Canelo, that his career is coming towards an end, especially if he's not able to beat Bivol in the rematch? It could be. But once again, that's where Canelo, he's going to have to really step up. Even if he loses the Dimitri Bivol rematch, he has to beat David Benavidez and Jamal Charlo. Because if not, then you're going to be looked at in history a little bit differently.
For DAZN. Not saying that he will become a cash cow, but that's what they're aiming for. Because that Canelo Alvarez ship done already hit the iceberg, and it's sinking pretty fast right now. And Eddie and DAZN, they know this. With the tough options that Canelo Alvarez has on the table right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if he just up and retires. I know his fans would be happy.
Yes, Canelo Alvarez's stock and his ship apparently has hit an iceberg, even though the last fight, I believe, did about 1 million pay-per-view buys for the Gennady Golovkin fight. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? But yet this dude will not say the same thing with Deontay Wilder, and apparently his fight did not even do 100,000 pay-per-view buys. Like, Canelo with Caleb Plant alone was able to do 900,000 pay-per-view buys. Deontay Wilder against Robert Elenius with Caleb Plant on the card as the co-main event, I don't even think was able to do 100,000. Now, I'm not sure how true that is, but I know damn well that the fight card didn't do that well because I haven't heard the numbers released at all. So it is what it is. So I can't say really that Canelo's career is over, but we all know that Dante, that he doesn't like him. So it is what it is. But once again, these next few years are going to be very revelatory about how truly great Canelo Alvarez is. In my opinion, it's already very clear that he's already a great fighter, but how great are you really? We'll see what happens.
If he retires, because the Canelo Alvarez fans, they know he's not going to beat any of the top guys at 168 or 175. They all know deep down Canelo Alvarez is a very flawed, limited fighter. If Canelo Alvarez
was as flawed and as limited as what you say he was, Dante, Canelo would have not won the majority of the fights that he has won. Like, you're not even talking about a dude that has been able to beat just decent contenders. You're talking about a dude that has defeated A grade after A grade after A grade after A grade fighter, undefeated fighter after undefeated fighter. Like, it's just so ridiculous what Dante always tries to allege.
Continues his career and he's forced to face tough competition, there's a very good chance that he will end up meeting the same fate that a lot of his Mexican predecessors did, which is getting knocked out, just like Oscar De La Hoya, Fernando Vargas.
So this same bullshit when it comes down to it that you already tried to state about Canelo Alvarez not being on their level. So what you're really saying, Dante, is that Canelo Alvarez actually is on their level. Anyway.
Vargas, Julio Cesar Chavez, and Marco Antonio Barrera did. Canelo Alvarez.
And like I said, Canelo is, in my opinion, already greater than those guys. But if he does end up losing to Charlo and David Benavidez, I think losing to Dimitri Bivol, in my opinion, that's not really as big of a deal, even though, in my opinion, it still would count against him a little bit. But if he ends up losing against Jamal Charlo and David Benavidez, then he has to be deranked a little bit.
As he just had a really minor surgery on his wrist or his hand. And when I say minor, I really do mean minor. He basically had calluses removed from his wrists. So my point is, he will definitely have enough time to fight in May. You know, there was talks that maybe Canelo is not going to fight in May. He has no reason to not fight in May right now. And I'll tell you right now, if Canelo waits all the way to September to fight, his buzz will die out even more, especially when you look at his last two performances. He got completely dominated by Bivol, and he did not look good against a 40-year-old Gennady Golovkin. So Canelo Alvarez...
I need to know overall what their definition of good is. I need to know what their definition of good is. Because if winning the fight, in my opinion, 11 rounds to 1 is not good, then I don't know what is. Now, don't get me wrong. If you wanted to state that it was not the best, fight of Canelo Alvarez's career or the best performance, sure, you can go ahead and say that. There's really no problem with that. But these guys, once again, these guys try to act like Canelo Alvarez, like this dude fought tooth and nail with him. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, it's just so stupid. Like, this is why I can't take a lot of these guys seriously. It's like either A, how retarded are you, or how overall biased are you to the point to where you actually have these type of these type of commentaries. And I get certain people that come in here and say, "Oh, well, you're doing the same thing. You're just claiming overall what you think, same as them." Right, but at least my point of view, and I'm not trying to overall sound like I'm better than anyone else here or anything like that, but at least my point of views a lot of the times are very realistic. Like, these guys overall, they're so batshit insane with a lot of the shit they say, it doesn't even make any damn sense.
Is really in a bad situation right now. And you heard Eddie Hearn say it's eating Canelo Alvarez up, that he lost to Bivol. And that could turn out to actually be true because boxing is a very mental sport. And taking an L like that, the way Canelo Alvarez took, it could really psychologically affect his confidence, which might have had something to do with why he looked so poor against Gennady Golovkin in that third fight. That's all I got for now.
Well, he didn't really look poor against Gennady Golovkin at all. A and B, I thought that Canelo Alvarez was personally carrying Gennady Golovkin a little bit. I thought that he could have stepped on the gas even a little bit more. I think that he wanted to make it look like he was a little bit more competitive than what it was. I think that he carried Gennady. That's also another thing I got to state as well, because I've had certain people overall tell me overall certain fixed fights happen here and there. A lot of people really know what the hell a fixed fight is. Like, I get certain guys on here that claim that, oh, Sergey Kovalev took a dive over Canelo. No, Sergey Kovalev, in my opinion, did not take a dive with Canelo. That was a very decently competitive fight. And then Canelo was able to beat the aging and somewhat, a little bit more wore down, Kovalev, who still probably was an A-minus fighter when Canelo fought him. But the punches that you could see Canelo, landing on that of a Sergey Kovalev, they looked very real. They looked very impactful. And when you also take a look at the Dimitri Bivol fight, I had this one dude that claimed that, oh, Dimitri Bivol was holding back his punches. Like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? Like, Dimitri Bivol overall, when it came down to it, first of all, probably was not going to have the same confidence in the Canelo Alvarez fight because there's a lot of pressure. So then he's coming off of the performance of a lifetime over Canelo. He probably was going to have more confidence heading into the Gilberto Soto Ramirez fight. And if you look at the highlights, it's very clear that Dimitri was not holding a lot back on his punches. So it is what it is.
Let's move on to the next one. All right.
But anyways, that's really about it for today. I just thought that I would talk about that. But once again, these next few years is going to be very revelatory of Mr. Canelo and how truly great that he is. In my opinion, he's already an all-time great fighter. And certain people, once again, will disagree. Once again, if you have Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales, even Miguel Cotto and Oscar De La Hoya, who are fighters that are above those guys, and Juan Manuel Marquez, let me put it like this. If you have Sugar Shane Mosley, Oscar De La Hoya, Miguel Cotto, Juan Manuel Marquez, all those fighters are within the same league, in my opinion. If you have those fighters as all-time great fighters, Canelo is above each and every single one of those fighters, period, point blank, at least in my opinion. Now, if he ends up losing to Charlo and David Benavidez, then we'll have to look at him a little bit differently. Then he'll have to be more on those guys the same level, but not until. But anyways, that's really about it for today. I just thought that I would talk about that, and it is going to be very interesting to see where Canelo goes from here. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.